All right, man. All right, well, let's get it started. This is
Do
this
it.
is this is episode 2, and we've settled on a name for this project of ours. We're calling this the Dad Speak Podcast.
Love it.
So we got that set up right now. Basically, we've got our personal social media accounts. We've got a YouTube channel set up explicitly for the purpose of distributing the video version of the podcast. And then if you want to know where you can actually listen to the audio version of the podcast, you can listen to it on a platform called Anchor or a number of other platforms, basically podcast players like Breaker, Google Podcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify would probably be a big one for a lot of people. Apple Podcast will likely be coming, but that platform typically takes the longest to get a podcast approved and up and going. So, but there'll be more. There'll be more, and we'll keep getting notified as they come in, and we'll share those updates. So that's kind of the housekeeping stuff. Anything you want to add to kicking it off here for the second episode?
Just because I'm so excited to say the words, if you guys go to the YouTube channel, the Dad Speak YouTube channel, give us a like and subscribe. Ring the bell.
Like and subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, ring that bell.
I feel so
subscribe, smash that bell button.
Oh, that's like years of like I've made it. I've made it now.
I have arrived.
Received a lot of great feedback from a lot of people on our first episode. So
yeah, that's good. I've got two. So we got one guy. We got Tyler Overstreet. He's agreed to come on for episode 3. And then I think I've even got another guest lined up. Maybe we do it like if we got a guest, we could do every other. But I've got another friend of mine who's a trainer, a gym owner in Kansas City, who said that he's up to have a guest appearance on here with us too. So that's pretty awesome.
I had one of my friends reach out to me. He lives in New York, and he's. I'll talk about him a little later on in the episode. He's not even a dad, but he's like, I want to. Like,
that's
you guys
awesome.
are talking about cool stuff. I want to talk about that with
That's
you.
awesome. Yeah, and I think like it's always so like the way you position any piece of content, right? It's like, you know, there's so much content crossing people's face that you kind of have to put some kind of flag in the sand so people understand, like, is this for me or not for me? Yeah. But to your friend's point, there's so much that overlaps between like what makes a good father, what makes a great husband, what makes you successful being a good professional, right? Like, there's just so much, like, it's more of like whatever like set of glasses you want to put on to like color the context of the conversation, but it's so applicable to a lot of other things. So that's awesome. Yeah, I've been very excited by the feedback. I think it's a relatable topic. You know, it's something that people they have a dad or they are a dad, right? So it's like it's easy to find a connection.
It's like I described it as it's a podcast by dads, but not exclusively for dads.
I love that.
Even though
that needs to be part of our intro. So let's rewind this. All right, welcome to episode 2 of the Dad Speak Podcast, a podcast by dads, but not exclusively for dads.
Awesome.
All right. Well, you start with the first topic. We're very prepared this time around. We actually have a list. We got some organization, some structure. Hopefully this one we'll keep it less than an hour this time. The other one clocked in about an hour and a half. So this one we're gonna shoot for like 45 minutes to an hour. So
love it. Let's do it.
Kick it off, man.
So I thought we'd start off with dad moments.
That's a good one.
Moments of the week.
This is important. This is like, as like a coach, like I love this because it's so important. Like, you can get so fixated on where you're going that you never stop and like celebrate the wins, right? Like,
okay. You have to smell the roses. You have to reflect.
You have to. Like, it's what's the point, right? Yeah. So, okay. So I put on, I guess my top moments. I really had 2 that really came foremost to mind. One was just an experience. So we have our little one, our 2-year-old Kyler. for some reason he is really taken to fall and Halloween. Like the last, the last 2 or 3 months, it's been nothing but zombies, skeletons, dressing up, vampire, like, and he does all the, like these, like, cause he obviously watches YouTube videos of people like pretending to be these things.
Mhm.
So then he parrots it. He's like, I'm a vampire, and he has all these like weird dances and voices he does. But anyway, so it's kind of funny. We were like about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were trying to think of like, where can we take him that will like really excite him? That's like kind of that theme related. And the closest thing at that time we could think of was Hobby Lobby, right? Because I got a fall decoration. So that was fun. But then we decided to kind of like level up out of like budget mode. And we actually took him to a pumpkin patch. We took him to a pumpkin patch called, I want to say it was Old Yale Farms in Frontenac, Kansas.
Okay.
And it was like, we looked at several different ones, and this was one that was like reasonably close in driving distance, had tons of stuff to do. So if you're in this area, if you're in the four-state area, that would be a high recommendation. So we took him there, and he lost his mind. He got to pick out a pumpkin. He got to go on like a tractor train ride thing they had set up there. They had all kinds of activities for the kids. It's very exciting when you can kind of like elicit that sort of reaction from your kids, spoil them a little bit. Next moment is more of like a humble brag. So like an ongoing theme in this year, in this year of Cal, my oldest son, is video games. It's like, that's like a huge thing right now. He's just on it. But he's in this like awkward phase where like, he's in this really awkward phase where games are either way too easy or they're just slightly too complex, right? And
Okay.
so he can't really navigate the games that really challenge him. He can't really navigate totally by his own. He always needs some kind of parent help, which is fine.
Like,
And
what's the bar? What's the bar he's at right now? Throw out an example.
So like there's so like we have a game on our Nintendo Switch that's like a Paw Patrol game. And it's really simple. It's just like a 2D leveler, and he just runs across the thing, jumps over stuff, collects bone, doggy treat bones, things like that. So it's basically like jump up, move back, move forward, avoid obstacles, that sort of thing. He crushes
Mario Brothers style.
Yeah, exactly. And so he crushes that. The complexity of the levels is not enough. Like and that's like, obviously that like game designing is all about that. It's like finding that sweet spot where you don't challenge your user to the point of like throwing it against the wall, but you challenge them just enough that they have to try 3 or 4 times to get over it. And then like the game that he's in love with, that I think is a really awesome game. It's a lot of fun to play, but it is very challenging, is this, it's a physics-based puzzle solving game. So like you control this like this kind of like gummy-like character that you can control its arms, and you can grab things and manipulate things in the world around you. And you have to solve these physical problems in these levels, 3D levels, to keep advancing along in the game. And we've played it through several times all the way to completion. And that's what he loves to play. He watches people on YouTube play it. He watches other dads and sons play it. So every day after work, it's like, are you like, even now that I'm working from home, like I'll walk through the house and he'd be like, are you off work? Are you off work? Hey, is work over? Is work? Cause he's just chomping at the bit, cause he can play it somewhat, but he knows he needs my help to really, storm through the levels.
Yeah.
And he does this thing where when he knows we're going to play, he gets this, like, he just gets really pumped, and his speech gets like rapid and pressured, and he like has no patience for any type of like, anything that would like stop our gameplay. And so I can get very can get very annoyed and like irritated really quickly, because he'll be like barking at me to like, do it like this, no, like that, like trying to tell me how to play. And I will admit,
like, kid, you came to me.
I know. That's how I guess I'm like, dude, calm down. But I know like it's a combination. Like he's very excited to play. He hasn't been able to play with anyone all day. It's a combination of things.
Yeah.
But I haven't been the best always at maintaining my composure as a father in those situations. And this last week though has been a big improvement. That when we talked last Wednesday, that's kind of been a big focus for me in my parenting, is really building that patience muscle and remembering that, hey, he's a toddler. He's still learning how to like modulate and deal with all this excitement and these emotions and things like that. So
I
that's a
felt
very
the same
long
way.
to humble brag about my patience the last week.
I felt the same way. It was, hey, we talked about this the other day. I can't get upset anymore.
Yeah, and you know it's funny. Like that's funny that the power like goals have,
Hmm.
put them out there like that. When you put them out there in the world and you're like, hey, I'm working on this, and then all of a sudden it's like now all of a sudden you're not just accountable to your inner self, who you can kind of like silence at any moment, right? That suits you. Now it's out in the world, and and people know it, right? And so like you're almost like, now you feel like even if somebody isn't, like even if somebody hasn't even had that agreement where they're like, I'm going to hold you accountable, for some reason when you put that out into the world, you almost feel accountable to
Hmm.
everybody, right? To like kind of align yourself with what you've said. Or at least, I mean, at the very least, I feel that way. I kind of feel like it's a representation of my integrity and my word. And like, if I said I was going to be patient, I need to actually be patient, you know?
Yeah, it's. I think people underestimate the power of goal setting, kind of in every situation. One of my favorite things that I listen to, on repeat every now and then, is Tyson Fury. He's the heavyweight champ of the world. Quite a character. If you guys have never seen his episode on the Joe Rogan podcast, because Joe Rogan needs more listeners, go check out just him talking about getting over like drug addiction and alcoholism and stuff like that. If you don't know I won't talk all about it, but basically he ballooned up to like 400 pounds.
Oh, wow. I had
And
no idea.
yeah, was, in and out of rehab, was kind of suicidal at one point, and basically got it together on his own. Um, just he started setting little goals again. He won the heavyweight championship of the world and kind of ballooned up, and then he's like, I'm going to start setting goals again. And a year later, got back down to fighting weight, and I mean, just recently he got his heavyweight belt back. So
That's incredible.
go if you guys ever want to listen to something that's pretty inspiring, but just kind of he keeps talking about it. He goes, I don't know what people need to get over addiction. He goes, for me, or for mental health issues, he goes, for me, I just need to keep setting goals.
That's awesome,
So
man. So like it's something like it's one of those things that I struggle with so much, because I know like as a dad, for example, with my kids right now, like I know that these years that I have with them when they're this little and this tuned into me are fleeting, right? Like I'm never getting them back. There is no do-over. There is no return to start and try again. But yet on the flip side, I feel very ambitious as a young man. Like I want to go and do things and build things and leave a mark and accomplish things. And that usually requires sacrificing time and energy that you would put other places, you know?
yeah,
And so that's a constant balance, especially when you have things, you know, it's one thing when you go to a job or you have a career or anything that doesn't light you up, but it's another thing when you have a lot of passions and a lot of projects and a lot of things you're interested in where you could put your time and energy. And so you're constantly having to make sure you're checking in with yourself. Like you've got to really make that priority of like, okay, in my mind, or the way I frame it is like the kids are priority one, because there's no do-over. All that other stuff can always be done over. It can always, there's always going to be an opportunity again for more work or other projects or other opportunities like that. But that's difficult because I think progress towards a goal in my world is almost foundational to my sense of contentment and happiness. Like I need to feel
Absolutely.
And when you're raising kids, that progress is so hard to see in any definitive, measurable, predictable manner, right? It's not like losing weight. It's not like paying off debt. It's, you know what I mean? It's not this like immediate thing that you can point to a metric and track it and see it every day. And you know that you see it in flashes, right? When your kid does something or they speak a certain way or they act a certain way, it's like, oh, it's working. But you don't get that like on this predictable pattern.
Well, and I think it's so hard to, I think that balance of ambition is such a good thing to have. I think not only is it good to meet goals, but it's good. I think it's good to overreach and not always meet things, but keep trying. But with kids, I mean, you talked about there's no metric to measure a lot of that stuff, and I think that's the big hurdle. I think you got that right on the head because we can the things with a job or something like that or a tangible goal that we have. There's benchmarks of success, and they're logical and they're rational. Whereas that balance of family time, where we can go to a pumpkin patch for a few hours, or I could take this extra time to finish this report and really blow it out of the water with my boss tomorrow.
Hey.
And logically, you should probably do that so you can feed your kids better. But at the same time, it's those little moments that matter. So there's nothing wrong with sacrificing some time.
And that's it. There is. It's like you have to understand the context, but the way that example you just painted is the perfect example, right? It's like, oh, I could make our family more financially secure by getting a second job and spending 5 or 6 more hours a week working and earning some more money. And that, like, you can easily see there's a straight line there between doing something and achieving something. And versus taking those 5 or 6 hours and reinvesting it into time with your kid, there's like, you're like, it's not this thing you can make a line through. But to I guess to go back to the original point here is to Tyson Fury's point, I would 100% like totally kind of not necessarily, I want to say agree, but I can totally relate to that sense of here's something I'm striving and working against. What that does for me mentally is next level. And like, I know, like I've told my wife this, like, if we're not making progress towards a goal, I'll make it very clear. Like, I need to feel like we are advancing in some aspect of our life for my own sanity, for like my feeling of contentment and well-being. And if I can't feel that way, we need to have a discussion about what we can do to kind of modify. For us, it's been money, like making advances in our financial life. I want to see our debt go down. I want to see our savings increase. I want to see our family become more stable. And so if I'm not seeing some progress in that area of our life month to month, that is like, I'm like, oh man, we gotta do something about that, and I don't know, it rights the ship, right? It orients the ship in a way that other things can't. So yeah, definitely stated goals, very important.
Absolutely. So kind of getting through, we talked about your dad moments, my dad moments.
Hit him, man. Come on, hit him. Throw him out here.
My nephew Caden, he had football practice. We live over in Carl Junction, Missouri. Then he had football practice, and they practice over by those baseball fields in CJ. And I literally just spent the entire time, didn't watch any of the practice hardly at all. Just chased our almost 2-year-old around the baseball fields, and it was one of those things. It was almost mindless. There's no point to it. There was no goal or anything. Just following her around, making sure she didn't fall on her face or anything.
Presence, right? Like you had presence.
Yes. Yeah. And just, I don't know, just doing that and having no outside kind of, I don't know, maybe just any outside interactions with anything else. Just I'm in the moment right now with my kid, and
So
to the point where I didn't even think about that until after.
yeah, so few and far between, right? Like that,
It was
you
very
just
nice.
don't get that uninterrupted time.
I think we climbed up and down the bleachers like 50 times, and we didn't say a word about it. It was just she went up and I went up after her. She came down, I came down, and she went back up. And I was like, okay, this is where we're at now. So
Your wife must have told her to wear you out.
yes, most definitely. Um, so then my other dad moment, and this is something that actually I do because of my wife. She talked about. So my oldest is, she has strep this week.
Oh, that's the
Um,
worst.
yeah, she has kind of a cruddy immune system, so we're trying to figure this stuff out. And she's such a trooper, but it sucks.
Like,
Um,
God dang it, you got such a crappy immune system.
yeah, it's like a king of the hill lobby. Um, but but one of the things my wife said that you guys can hear my youngest is crying right now.
You never
My wife, when
cooperate.
she was a little girl, if she had a sore throat, her dad would go get her a shake from Brahms, and that's kind of become our tradition. First thing my daughter said when we were like, okay, well, we're gonna stay home from school tomorrow, and her throat's hurting. She just goes, "Can I have my ice cream tonight, Dad?" Yes. And can I have it tomorrow too? Why not? And it's a nice little thing that I picked up from my wife that I really love, that it's expected now.
Yeah,
And I
rituals.
I like having that role in that thing for her. It's something that as awful as being sick, she looks forward to. And we have
Yeah,
that little tradition now. So
we need that. We need that not only for our kids, like to provide stability and structure, and there's something, I don't know what it is, but there's something so important about growing up in an environment where you know what's expected, and you know what to expect, right? Like there's something, if you grow up in a household where one of your parents was kind of somewhat of a time bomb, you never really knew, like, may they come through the door and you're not really certain, like, was it a good day or a bad day at work? Or is it, this could go really, the anxiety that can cause,
yeah,
but being able to create that environment for your kids where it's like they have this like sense of predictability. And
yeah.
I don't know, it provides a sense of calm. I think I know for me it did, growing up. I think it does for our kids too. They know what the routine is. They know dad goes to work. They know he comes home. They know bedtime's at this time. They know we're going to do this kind of routine before bed.
Mhm.
And as much as sometimes they want to push back on that structure, it's like, I don't know. I think without it, it would be so much worse. But it's kind of cool to see kids start to pick up on that and expect it, and
Well, I like what
I'm a big believer in rituals like that. That's just, it's a big deal.
I liked what you said about expectations, because they're very cyclical. Kind of what you were
Yeah,
saying is
100%.
your kids expect that of you, and then in turn they kind of expect that of themselves, but you also have expectations now, and they're aware of that. And it just goes around
Mm.
and around. And
Yeah, it
so
makes it so much easier. There's
there's,
nobody's surprised or caught off guard by what comes next.
yeah, from the teaching side, that's something where, and this has really picked up in the last couple of years, is the teaching of routines in the classroom, so that you could have that nailed down. Even at the high school level, my first unit, so I teach history, but my first unit for like the first 3 weeks, even for high school kids, we don't talk about history at all. It is literally for the first 3 weeks. I tell them, here's how we're going to take notes when we take notes. Here's how assignments are going to work. When we have a test, here's my expectations. Here's how I want you guys to turn stuff in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that when we do start hitting those history units, we are running the whole time, and we don't have to stop to be like, Mr. Roberts, how do we take a test again? We
Yeah,
did that already.
totally. Yeah, it's like layering, right? Like and I think it's sometimes as human beings we try to. There's something we can try to see things as being, I guess, too simple. Like, oh, well, that's too simple. So we got to make it more complex than that, right? For
Yeah.
example, like you said, like this is how we take notes. Well, that's too simple. We've obviously got to layer on actual content and understanding and comprehension and testing and it's like, no, let's just, to your point, let's just start with like the basic of the
Yeah.
structure of note taking, and then we'll figure out, once we've mastered that one skill or behavior, then we'll start stacking. And I think though that's where we lose people, is because they think they start to think of the habit stacking. They like start piecing it apart, and they're like, oh my God, if we take this much time to learn all these things piecemeal, it'll take forever. But
Usually it's the opposite is true.
Exactly, because you pick up, it's kind of like this curve where it's like, now that you're stacking habits, it's like by the 11th or 12th stack, you're like crushing efficiency. Then if you had tried to do them all kind of at the same time in parallel rather than sequential.
Exactly. Love it.
Very good.
All right. So that was quite a start.
It's good, man. Celebration. That's a good thing. It's the piece of the puzzle. I think so many, if you're, I don't know if high performer is the right word, but if you're an achiever, if you're ambitious, it's one of those things you kind of glance over. You don't stop to look back and be like, holy shit, look how much we've accomplished,
Right.
and how much good we've done and how much good we've had. But that's like, to me, that's like going back to what we talked about in the last episode. That to me is the unlock for happiness. It's like having that sense of gratitude and celebration for what is and what you have is what allows you to gain perspective and have contentment and be at peace, while at the same time pursuing things, right? Like you have goals, but stopping to recognize that, like, look at all the great stuff that we've been able to experience and do. If nothing else happens, we're good, right? But if more happens, then even better, right?
Yeah, I can't remember who said it. I want to say I heard it from Jocko Willink, but it's very possible I heard it from someone else. Is talking about success and failure are both incredibly slow and gradual processes. So I think it's kind of that thing. It's not the thrill of the kill; it's the thrill of the chase. I think that's
the process.
a lot. Yeah, that process is much more satisfying than just okay. I mean, to reach a goal is almost a relief, but the fun part is all the hard shit you had to do to get there.
Yeah, I think about that all the time in the context of football. All the time, I tell people all the time, like I don't miss Friday nights, but I do miss practices. I miss practice. I miss the camaraderie of having a group of people that are pursuing a common goal and have like values and shared experiences. That's the part it's hard to recognize that, but when you're living it, but that it really is, that's the process is really the win of it all. Yeah. What the outcome is at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
Love it.
All right. What's on the list for the next stuff?
So we had last week, I really liked our podcast. We kind of had a bunch of different topics we tried to go over, and we did a pretty good job. But I was kind of thinking about it, and I was like, maybe we could compartmentalize one of those topics each into like a podcast.
Yeah, I think that's good. Because I think what inevitably happens is one topic spills into 10, and then you know what I mean. You kind of through the constraint, you make sure you don't, and it keeps us focused. So I think that's good. So what are we starting with this week?
So I thought we'd go into like the physical foundations of fatherhood. It sounds very official. Just kind of things I think about, like
physical foundations of fatherhood.
And and obviously a lot of your content has to do with being in shape and healthy living, healthy lifestyles. And that's something I've really gotten into in the last year and a half, 2 years. And so one thing, I've kind of thought about in the context of this podcast is, is there a need for dads to be physically fit? Do you have to be physically fit?
Yeah. So obviously right off the bat, I have to obviously recognize the bias that I bring to this conversation, because I believe that I'll just put it out there. I believe that movement makes you human. I don't understand how you can be a completely fully functioning human being and not be moving your body every day in some way, shape, or form. I just, there's a lot of, I don't know, everyone has a different belief system, obviously, as to how we got here. But if we look at the science, there's a lot of things that point to the fact that our brain has developed out of a necessity to navigate the environment around us. There's just so much interlink between your psychological well-being and your physical well-being, and how tied together they are, and how one feeds the other. So I think just from that standpoint, yes, I think if you're a dad, you're a human. And if you're a human, then you need to be moving. I think the degree of physical fitness can vary. Obviously not everyone needs to be Jay Cutler, or Ronnie Coleman, or, one of these freaks of nature, Greek gods type of body, or an athlete like, I don't know, like LeBron James, something like that. I'm not saying that anyone needs to be to that degree, but I also don't think any of us want to have difficulty getting out of bed in the morning either.
Yeah. I think, I would definitely agree with you. I don't want to, chastise any dads who aren't in shape yet, but I think it makes things a lot easier. It greases the gears much better. And for me, that's kind of personal experience. Part of the reason I kind of share this a little bit, for me, I've lost about 30 some odd pounds in the last year. And part of that motivation was I just had no energy to do anything. And I started to read up about sedentary lifestyles, and, if you want to have energy to go, you have to be going a lot of the time. And so that was and it does help. Absolutely, that physical prowess definitely translates to mental prowess as well. And
I think
it stabilizes my mood too.
And that's kind of like there's actually a great book. It's called of course I would forget it, but it's by a psychologist. She's written some other stuff on stress, which is very good. The title of the book is, I'm vamping here. I want to say it's Kelly McGonigal. It's so good. It just came out just recently. Yeah, Kelly McGonigal. Joy. Oh man, this is gonna drive me nuts if I can't find it. Oh, I know why. It's on my Audible, not my Kindle. I listen to a ton more books nowadays than I read them.
Yeah.
It just seems easier to get it in.
I listen to the most useless audiobooks.
Okay, so this one's called The Joy of Movement. It's really good. Okay. And this is kind of like, she really does connect the pieces of like and she dives into like a lot of like the research that's been done, and she dives into like connecting the pieces of movement and just not like lifting weights or doing aerobics or anything like that. She just talks about how like the act of moving our bodies and exercising, how it's so interlinked with our brain chemistry and how we feel, how we think about ourselves, the world, people. And so like when I just off the top of my head, like I know like the literature is very clear that on par with most of the most powerful antidepressants on the market, exercise
Mm-hmm.
tends to have an equivocal, if not similar or better effect for the majority of people in that area. And there's just an unlock there, and it's hard for people to understand until they start doing it for a while. But it's like, I mean, it's just like anyone that has a big lifestyle change like that, right? They just become an evangelist for it. And it always seems so over the top, but until you experience it for yourself, it's hard to really describe. What I was going to say though, like in the context of dads need to be physically fit, is I really thought, like, cause taking it down to a more granular level and applying it to dads, I look at it from a practicality standpoint first and foremost. Like, as a dad, you want to have the ability to protect your children. You know what I mean? You do not want to be concerned with the fact that some man could overpower you or some woman could overpower you or outrun you in the act of harming your child, abducting your child, running. I mean, these are very dark things, but they are very like real world practical situations where your physical prowess matters, right? Like when someone is going to try to come do harm to you or yours, you want to have some self-confidence that you have the physical abilities to do something about it. And maybe you're not trained in martial arts, or you don't have a self-defense that you practice, but just knowing that, hey, like, I'm strong, I move well, I can run reasonably fast for a reasonable amount of distance without getting gassed. So if things go to ground here, I can somewhat handle this situation. And I can at the very least, I can grab my kid who weighs 30 or 40 pounds and I can run flat out for a mile to get away from these people. You know what I mean? Like at the very least, right? Like that's one option that you have. So like that to me can't be overlooked enough.
That was the first thing I wrote in my notes too.
Yeah, it's like it's just so practical. It's like, of course, people could throw a bunch of different situations at me where it's like, well, what about this? Well, if they have a gun, and like, yes, I'm not saying that physical fitness sums out any threat to you or your family. What I'm saying is that it does give you a leg up though in the situation compared to someone who maybe hasn't taken care of themselves.
It's an extra edge.
It's an extra edge, exactly. And then the second thing I was thinking of in this context of dads needing to be fit is aspirational. So for me, this is, I want to be able to coach my son's t-ball. I want to be able to play catch with him. If my son wants to be a catcher, I want to be able to squat down. I want to have good hip mobility so I could actually not only coach him on the technique, but demonstrate that technique for him. Just any kind of, I want to be able to go on adventures. If my kids want to learn how to rock climb or ride skateboards or do mountain biking, anything like that, I want to, without hesitation, I want to be able to be like, yes, let's do that. And I'll take you to do that. And I'll join in with you. You know, you'll have an adventure buddy. And those aren't things you can just do off the couch. Like you're going to end up getting hurt.
Yeah. And kind of going back to what you said, no, I absolutely agree with that. Kind of going back to what you said about protecting your kids, that was a big motivation for me as well. Kind of both the things you just talked about were the big motivations for me to start working out and getting more in shape. It's talking about a lot of Rogan today. But he has, there's one episode where he's talking to a couple of his buddies who are comedians who are, a little out of shape, and they're like, what's your motivation? And he kind of jokingly is like, my motivation is rape and murder. And they're like, what? And he just goes, when I get really tired, I think about saving the people I love. And and he's like, I straight up think about like murdering people that's trying to hurt my family.
Hey, I don't knock that because
his buddies were all flabbergasted. They're just like,
there is a real value in playing out those theoretical scenarios in order to drive yourself to a different place. Like it's the same thing that perspective does. Like playing out the scenario of your family passing away drives you to a place of gratitude for them being here and with you, right? Like, I know, like one of the Stoics used to say, like, this is very morbid, but he used to say, like, you know, I think it was Seneca, but he used to say, like, when you kiss your kids to bed at night, you should kiss them and pretend as if they won't be there in the morning. And because that drives you to such a deep
that perspective
of, yeah, it's like you feel immensely grateful and you feel immensely blessed to have these people in your life and to have spent a day with them. And to that guy's point, though, is the same thing. It's like, if you're trying to really get yourself into shape, there's going to be shitty moments, but you can drive yourself to a whole different headspace by imagining, okay, this is not as shitty as if I wasn't in shape and something bad did happen, right? Like, think of how bad that would feel and be. So I don't knock that as a mental technique at all.
I've done it once, and where I was running with a buddy of mine, and we were trying to do a 10K, which was a lot of fun. And the route that we went on by his house is super hills, unbelievable. Like, there's no hills where I run around my house, and so I was dying at one point. And then I was like, okay, I imagined like someone had my almost 2-year-old, and I was like, I got to chase them down. Because we had like 3 miles left, and I was gassing bad. And I was like, I got to chase them down. I got to get, or someone's running.
Did you set a PR? Did you set a PR? I bet you
I didn't set a PR, but I kind of zoned out. And then it literally felt like a minute went by and we were done. And I was just like, we're not done. We just turned that one corner. My friend was like, no, we did the rest of the run. Or like, I was visualizing someone running to the front door of my house with a weapon or something. I was like, I gotta stop them before they get in there. It was.
That makes me think of that Joe Rogan comment. Makes me think of a Quest Nutritionist founded by these 3 guys: Tom Billy, Ron Pena, and I can't remember the third guy's name. But they were on a pod. One of their original podcasts that they hosted was Inside Quest, and all 3 of them. Tom Billy was the host of it. And he was interviewing the other 2 guys, his other 2 co-founders. And I think it was Ron Pena. It may have been the other guy. Basically, they were like, he was getting after like, what motivates you to do all this stuff that you do? Because he's kind of like one of those polymaths, right? He's like in everything, does everything. And he like was very clear. He's like, if I walk into a room with other people, my goal is to be better at those other people at as much as I can be better at them. I will outfight them, outshoot them, outrun them, outlearn them, outread them, outwrite them. He's like, that's just like, that's what drives me. Like, I know that there's people out there that are smarter than me, better at me than many at tons of other things. And that forces me, like, I want to learn this. I want to learn that. I want to be better at this. And like, I love that. Cause you never run out. Like, for one, you never run out of things then to do or work at or pursue. And 2, that constantly forces you to continue to reevaluate your skill set. Like, is what I know today enough? Is it applicable? Is it good enough?
And there should be that healthy competition with dads. You don't necessarily have to, I have that mindset of I'm better than all of you, or try to one up each other. One upping, I think, is just a natural part of being a guy, and especially being a dad sometimes.
It's just being competitive, right? I mean, that's like,
to me, it's the benchmark has been set a little higher.
Yeah.
So like, okay, this dude's up here.
And you shouldn't, and you have to learn not to shy away from it. I mean, that's the piece of competition that I think you have to become comfortable with. You're stepping to the plate saying, I'm better than you. I mean, that's what that's like the key is being graceful enough when you lose to say, okay, I wasn't better. What can I do to improve? How can I get better? Right. Like, it's that, because I mean, why would you be stepping to the plate to compete if you didn't think you were good enough? Like,
And they have that edge without having that ego.
Correct. Like, and that's a balance. That's, that's definitely that balance, that line between like confidence and arrogance. Right. But like you have to, and like, I feel like at times as a kid coming up, that was a hard thing for me to work out was wanting to be competitive, but also being slightly uncomfortable with the competitiveness and how that how that would make other people feel about themselves, how that made me feel about myself. But you do it enough, you compete enough. And I think that's like getting reps, right? Getting reps, compete. And for kids that like at young ages, like get them into competitive settings, learn to compete gracefully, learn to be good competitors, to pick each other up. And that's like kind of that idea of like what you're saying about dads, right? Is like, only other people that are here competing with us matter, right? Mm-hmm. So like, if you're in the arena and you're competing, we are competing with each other, but we're all in this together. We're all, you know what I mean? Like we're all trying to be the best, and in that we're together. You can't
look at it as there's a big dude to my right, and I'm worried he's going to take me out. You have to think about it as there's that guy, and he's gonna Spartan. He's going to cover
exactly.
Here
exactly.
We're going to work together on this.
100%, dude. I mean, we're going to get to it, but I think that's kind of like the next question on here is kind of like that motivation piece. How do you find that motivation obviously we've established the need here to be physically fit. And then, I know as well as anybody from a coaching perspective, the next question is then how do you motivate yourself? I think we've kind of talked through a couple points there.
Yeah.
I'll just go through kind of my personal ones, I guess. And for everyone, it's going to be different. I think it's really important to understand that motivation is very multivariate, and there isn't going to be that one, like most people say, find your why. I think the key is find your whys. And because each one's going to ebb and wane at different periods in your life, and you're going to lean more on others at different times. So like for me personally, I just want to have the ability to participate. Like I said earlier, I want to be able to, when I'm 70 years old and like some 20 whippersnapper is deadlifting in the gym, I want to be able to like throw some wheels on the bar and go, and not have to worry about my back, not have to worry about my hips, right? Or if my kid is 21 and I'm 45 and he's like, hey, we're going to go out to Colorado and we're going to mountain bike for a week. I want to be like, I'm in, and I have to think about, what about my knee? Or have I kept myself up enough? What about my ankles? I don't want to have to worry about it. I just want to be able to like tear out and go, tied into that, I want to be able to age gracefully. Just like I mentioned, I want to hopefully live a really long, healthy life. I don't know if my mental or my physical body is going to fail me, but I want to do everything I can to make as many years as I'm here the most fun I can make them, and I think having a healthy body is important. Most of this is all future looking, really, long-term stuff too. And I think that's important. Like like if you have very long-term goals like this, then you're not really in a rush to figure everything out right now. And you're not
putting it in the bank for later.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. There's no rush. The empty nest year. So at some point my kids are going to be out of my house if I do my job right. And I am pretty set on the fact that, yeah, exactly.
Fingers crossed.
I asked my father-in-law, he's got 5 kids. Yeah, 5 kids. And every single one of them, he's like 4 of them have graduated high school. The 5th one's on its way. They're all like productive adults moving on to their next stages in life. And I was giving them shit. I'm like, you're 4 for 5, man. You're like going strong. You may bat 100, and like, I'm just hoping I get two done. But when they leave, when they move on, like I fully expect them, they need to start their own lives, get married, have their own interests and hobbies. And dad should take a back seat to that. He's going to fade into the background a little bit, cheering them on, but he's going to fade in the background. And when that happens, as my role as a father kind of steps back from more of an active role to more of a passive, where they're engaging me more than I'm engaging them as much, I want to be able to take off and pursue my goals, whatever that is, whether that's professional, physical, travel, I don't know, but I want to be able to be in good shape for that. I don't know what it is.
I kind of feel a lot of the stuff you're hitting on is similar stuff for me. And I've already mentioned it, being able to participate is a big one for me as well. I kind of always think of, there's this joke by Patton Oswalt where he's talking about, he goes, my fitness goals are to have my original knees later in life.
Yeah. So
I don't care about being cut. I don't care about being ripped. I just want to have my original knees when my daughter graduates high school. He goes, I don't want to be, under a tree in a scooter because pop gets sweaty in the sun.
Yeah, dude.
But I was like, yeah. I was like, that should be the goal.
I love that. Man, shit, if I'm 90 years old and my knees I mean, plug in some metal ones, I'm going to keep going. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to
get robot knees by then. No, and then what you're saying about the empty nest years is definitely something I've thought about. And, once you become that passive kind of role as a father, where you talked about your kids are engaging you, for me, I'm really looking forward to that, because then it's going to be probably my focus by then will be more being a husband, and because it'll just be me and Gabby again. And I want to make sure, people talk about those retirement years. Well, they just kind of relax and go through. Some people go through the motions, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But kind of what you talked about, I want to live my best possible life during that. I want to make sure that by the time, we retire, or by the time the kids are out of the house, that we're able to do all these other things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, exactly like that. And I talked about this in the first episode, but like, I'm making a very intentional decision for the next 20 years. Everything goes on the back burner, secondary to my family. It's just, I'm making that very clear statement. Like, I will work hard and do what it takes to provide for them, but I want to be present and engaged and available. Once that need on a daily basis subsides, when they're on to their adult lives, I fully expect, like, I'm going to crank it up. Like, whatever those things are that I've been wanting to do for the last 20 years, I'm going to go do them, and I can't do that if my energy's in the tank and my physical health is poor and I'm not appealing to look at or appealing to have a conversation with. It's just like you said, putting it in the bank for later. Like, that's the biggest key.
Don't want to look back and say, maybe I should have done some more yoga.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah.
For sure.
The other big motivation for me is kind of the saying that Dave Goggins has. And if any of you out there don't know who Dave Goggins is, I'm not going to tell you anything about him. Go Google him and go look up his Instagram motivational videos.
He's a psycho. He ran like a marathon with 2 broken legs or something like that. He's just, yeah.
He ran a 100-mile race when he had never ran before.
You can't. His book is titled "You Can't Hurt Me" or something like that, ain't it? Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And that's something like I try to say that sometimes if I'm running and I'm hurting, I'll just sit there and kind of repeat that to myself. And he has another saying where he says, "Who's going to carry the boats?" And what he's talking about, he's a retired Navy SEAL, and the Navy SEALs, that's a common saying during their BUDS training, because they literally are carrying these giant wooden boats on their shoulders. And to me, I heard that, and something about it kind of just resonated. And I was like, okay, what would that mean for me? And to me, whenever I'll say that to myself when I run, but when I picture it, it's literally, I'm picturing me holding a boat in water with my family in it. And so to me, it's just kind of like, I'm doing this right now, and it's really hard, and it sucks, and I don't want to do it. But there's going to be a time in our life where everything goes to hell, and it's going to fall on my shoulders, and I have to be ready to take care of that. And to
Hell
me,
yeah.
that's a big part of the mental aspect of working out.
Hell yeah. That's powerful, man. I think that totally resonates with me too. You know what I mean? You want to be that guy. Like if no one else will, I will, you know what I mean? And if
Yeah.
no one else can, I can. Like that's the you know, I want to be the person of last resort. Um,
It's that speech in Remember the Titans where he's talking to Sunshine before he goes in. He goes, I had 11 brothers and sisters. I was the youngest one. They all looked up to me.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's like, and that's the kind of like, I was talking to Kelsey about this. You know, we were talking about like, I hate the phone. I love the phone, but I hate the phone as a phone. I don't like when people call me, but there are those people in my life that when they call, I'm excited that they're calling. Right. And I want to be that kind of person. I want to be that kind of person that like, if I call you, you're excited to hear from me.
Mhm.
And if you need something, I'm the person you call, right? When the chips are down or you need something done or you want to get something done, you know that I'm the person that can carry the boat, right?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
the kind of person that I want to be in my life. And that's the kind of person I want to be in other people's lives. And to me, that requires physical fitness because I believe that I believe that there's no better way to build mental fortitude than through physical fortitude. And I believe that because physical challenges allow you to experience yourself in a way that you can't experience yourself otherwise. Meaning they will force you into a state of duress under which you have to respond. And nothing else in life almost really puts you in that sort of place. And you learn so like I always use the context of like 2-a-days in football. Nothing will ever be as physically demanding or as physically difficult as that week of practice. But because I went through it, because I endured it, because I experienced that, I know that like baby crying at 2 a.m. in the morning, no big deal. I'll get up. You know what I mean? Like it forces you to change that reference point. It's like that was hard. Everything else is like, it's like it's hard, but I've been there. I've done that. I know I can do it. If I can do this, I can do anything.
That's something I've struggled with lately is listening to my comfort voice quite a bit. And that's that voice. I always call it that. That's that voice. It's like, oh, just stay in bed. You had a rough day yesterday, and you don't need to go run this morning. And I've been really bad at that lately. I haven't been, sleeping fantastic. But I also know that if I were to get up, that wouldn't matter. So that's something where trying to reclaim the motivation there. But absolutely. And that's one of the aspects why I love, you talked about being in that situation of duress where you have to respond. That's one of the reasons I love martial arts so much. I was a wrestler in high school, and I've kind of trained jiu-jitsu and MMA off and on for a couple of years now. I'm certainly not this amazing fighter, but when you have that situation where you go to MMA practice, it's like today's sparring day, today's the gauntlet, where we're not doing any technique stuff. Two people are going to get into the middle of the mats, and you guys are going to throw down. And there's no feeling quite like, okay, I have to do something here, or I'm literally going to be punched in the face. And that's
it. My wife
that's
and
a physical aspect that I love.
I talk to my wife, like I've shared that with her before about the physicality of things and why I feel like that's why so many people who experience a physical awakening on the other side of it, they literally are a different person. And that's because through those physical feats, they experience themselves in a whole new way. They learn things about themselves that they could not have found through any other sort of enlightenment. And Kelsey she talks about this, but she had that experience with childbirth. Mm-hmm. With her first kid, that was like the pain, and her ability to deal with, handle, overcome, and respond to that level of adversity, which is one of probably the most difficult physical feats that a human being can do. she came out of that with like a whole new level of confidence in herself. Like not just in terms of having children, in terms of like everything in her life, she feels that much more competent because of that, you know? And it's just it's like, again, it's like, how do I help you experience the benefits of the pill before you actually take the pill? It's just not, it's really hard. It's a hard thing to pass on. But when you run your first marathon, or you do your first max effort deadlift, or you go to your first BJJ class and you spar for 5 minutes for the first time, it's like, like now I get it. You know what I mean? Like
you have that simple realization. Oh, I can do this.
I can do this. Like heck yeah, I've got a fifth gear, and I can be out of breath and laying down, and I can find the will to go forward, and that it translates on all the other things you do.
Yeah. I had one of those realizations with my friend Donnie. Shout out Donnie Martin. I don't think he has any social media stuff, but he's just fun. Everybody should get to know Donnie Martin. I'll leave his phone number at the end of the podcast. But him and I, we kind of talked about one time we went. It was the only time we've been to the gym together before, and we were like, let's do something really stupid. That was literally our conversation. Was let's do something stupid. So we lifted weights for a little bit, and then we were like, well, let's ride bikes for a bit. And then as we were riding bikes, we're like, what if we ride 50 miles on these bikes? And I straight like called my wife. I was like, are you going to be good if I'm going to be here a while? And she gave me the green light, and we did it. And it was a horrible mistake. Killed us. We rode nonstop from 8 o'clock to 1 in the morning and burned 4,000 calories. But we were like very injured afterwards. But
we never rode bikes again.
No, I have not rode a bike since then. I got home, and like every time I bent down, my knees cracked, and they didn't sound like good cracks at all. But on the flip side of that, me and him didn't talk about that at all the whole ride home. All we kept talking about was, I didn't think that was even possible. Like, we're idiots for doing this, but I didn't think physically I could ever do something like that. Not only did I figure I could, but it's what else?
It's a powerful thing. It's unfortunate such a small proportion of those living today actually do experience it or get into it. And I think that's kind of like the next point here is how do you talk about that? How do you not necessarily coach, but how do you speak with people about getting in better shape? And how do you do that with, I think about this all the time. How do I talk to clients? How do I talk to potential clients? How do I talk to my family members about their daily practices without sounding accusatory or judgmental or
preachy?
That's
the
preachy.
One I try to avoid is being preachy.
Yeah, any of those things. And I think it's difficult. I think first and foremost, your words mean shit if you don't have anything backing it up. So you probably have no business talking to anybody about their health and wellness or their health and fitness unless you're in that arena. I think that goes back to that, like, probably nobody cares about your opinion if you're not in the same arena as they are. I think that's why it can be sometimes difficult to coach people or mentor people that carry different roles or responsibilities in life than you do. It's hard for a 21-year-old to try to speak into a 45-year-old dad's life. Like that 45-year-old dad's like going to blow it off, right? Whether he should or not, it's hard to do that. And so that's why I think something like this is good. I'm a dad. I have a day job. I have a small side hustle coaching people. I have 2 little boys that I want to be present for, and I still work out every day. And so I think we need more of that. We need people who you can relate to, who are in the trenches with you and supporting you and wanting to help you and are also living it out the best they can,
Yeah.
and sharing. And I guess that allows you to share from a very real place, a place of a very personal place of experience, I think if I have to, like, I kind of wrote down my notes, like this is just both as a person and as a coach. I think first and foremost, you got to remember that everything is n equals 1. There are definitely best practices. There are, success leaves clues. So there are things that are better than others. I guess I'll put it like that. But everyone is still n equals 1. You should be remembering that there's nothing wrong with trying and testing. You want to find what is going to work for you. That's kind of that old adage of the best diet, the best workout plan is the one you actually stick to. Not the one you do for 4 weeks and then give up for a year and then come back to for 30 days and repeat that cycle forever. Talked about this earlier. I think you need to find your whys, all of them. You're going to need them because it is difficult, especially the getting into shape part. The staying in shape part's a little easier. The getting there is difficult. You're going to have to make sacrifices, and you need to have things you can draw on, whether that be being able to protect your children, whether that be being able to be there when your son graduates high school or when your grandson graduates high school, however you want to think about it, but finding all your whys. This is kind of the coach side of me. I think you need to start small. I think you need to start smaller than what you think is necessary. Like Jaxon was saying earlier about, teaching his kids to take notes before we actually take notes. So start small. If you want to go for a run every morning, start with putting your shoes by the door the night before. That's it. You don't even have to wake up in the morning and get in them and go for a run. Just every night for a week, put your shoes by the door before you go to bed. That's where, you know what I mean? And then start habit stacking from there. You do that for a week. Okay. Next thing you do is you wake up in the morning, you walk to your shoes, you put them on. That's it for a week.
I love that phrase, habit stacking.
Yeah. That's all you got to do. Make it so, and like, I don't even care if what I'm saying sounds way too easy, that it needs to sound so easy that there's no possible way you will not do it or you will mess it up. It's like, there's a technique called motivational interviewing that people use for behavior change. And basically, if I ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely or how confident you are in your ability to execute this thing that you're going to do, if you're below a 9, you make it smaller, you make it easier.
Yeah.
And then over time, you stack those things together, like you were talking about. And before long, now instead of spending 4 weeks where you were sort of kind of doing running, now you spent a week practicing getting your shoes ready, a week putting your shoes on, a week of actually getting out the door, a week of going for a 5-minute run. And then all of a sudden now that's that. And that's your habit stack that you can build on and never have to worry about being on or off. It's just a part of what you do in the morning.
And all of those little battles to actually get to the workout, those resonate. Sometimes those resonate even louder than the workout itself. Is the idea, oh my gosh, I woke up at 4:30 this morning. Like, oh my gosh, I fasted today.
100%.
And just a little, or instead of having a big sugary breakfast, I had an apple and a banana today. Those little battles, those little processes. Every time you win one of those, it builds momentum.
It does. It really does.
Momentum is so big.
It's the biggest thing. It's what will keep you moving forward. I think people should explore diets and movement practices that they actually enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one. I think that's part of having something that you actually stick to. So if you don't like lifting weights, don't force yourself to lift weights. If you love doing BJJ, do BJJ 7 days a week. You know what I mean? Find what you love, and you can sprinkle in doses of what you need. You can stretch, you can do some aerobics every now and again, but make your diet, your movement diet and your nutrition diet things that move you towards your goals, but that you genuinely enjoy. That's what'll keep you going and make it sustainable. For example, like I like when it comes to my diet, I know what my nutritional needs are. I'm not going to spend a single calorie, carb, fat, protein on food that I don't really absolutely 100% get lit up to eat. It's too precious to throw any of them away. That's the kind of the way I look at it. So I just think that's the most sustainable way to approach it. You should embrace the suck, like I was talking about earlier. This is gonna be difficult. Just accept it now and stop worrying about it. It's gonna be hard. It is what it is. Do the hard things when they're the hardest to do. That's kind of like that 2-a-days thing I was talking about. Is like some days you aren't going to want to work out, and some days you aren't going to want to work out, and there's going to be an added layer of inconvenience placed on top of you to work out. That's the day you should work out, right? If you're gonna work out any day, that's the day, because that level of difficulty that you overcome to work out now makes every other day that isn't as difficult to work out that much easier. It's just like putting a donut on a bat and swinging it. It's like the minute you take the donut off, the bat's so much lighter. When it's the hardest, do it. It'll make all the other days easier. And then the last one is, you're always going to struggle if your goals and your actions don't align. So if you say you want to lose weight, but you're overeating every day, you're always going to feel in a constant state of like conflict internally. And it's a horrible state to be in. So just get crystal clear. What are your goals? What do you really want? And then make sure that your actions are aligning with your goals. You're going to feel so much better. You're just going to feel so much better. And either one can move. Your actions can move or your goal can move. I've had tons of clients where they say they want to lose 20 pounds, but really they just want to feel better about themselves. And losing 20 pounds has nothing to do with that. You know what I mean? It's just what has to do with that is they need to exercise every day. And that kicks the bucket for them. But if you have that incongruency of, well, I've said I want to lose 20 pounds, but I don't really want to lose 20 pounds, but I said it and my actions aren't really leading. Like you just constantly in this state of like conflict, two different directions, nothing's aligned. That's kind of the best advice. I mean, obviously this could be a whole podcast in and of itself, but it's difficult. Like you got to have a reason, but you also got to start, right? And that's the key. Like you can't just wait for the why to come, but it is important to have those whys. It's a tough topic.
Yeah, I think you hit all of it really well. You said a lot of things that really resonated with me. I mean, for me, the big one is, for me personally, but also speaking to other dads, is it kind of goes back to me with like teaching and coaching, is the idea, remember, not everybody does it the same way. And for me, like I really don't like lifting weights very much. It's not, and part of it is an attention thing. Whereas I have trouble getting excited about it. But if you were to say, okay, tomorrow, like I have a boxing bag in my garage, and I have jiu-jitsu mats in my garage, and because I have no desire to go max out my bench press. But if you were to be like, hey, if you go run a couple miles and then do like a leg workout, like just body weight leg workout, I'm going to get, then my reward is like 25 minutes on the boxing bag. And for me, that is way more exciting than any other activity. So just knowing what motivates you, and you said a lot of that.
No, I love that. I think about that a lot. I think about that a lot in the context of my own training. Is like, that's why I was like talking about, like, if you like BJJ, you need to do things that are going to support your BJJ. Like there's definitely an old school mindset in that discipline where it's like you only need to do that thing. But I would counter that with, there's a lot of things you could supplement to your game that would make you better at that thing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, to your point, that's where it's like you could find the thing you absolutely love to do physically, and the fact that you're going to do some things that you need to do, like stretch or do some aerobics or those sorts of things that are going to make you better at doing those other things. And you kind of make that negotiation with yourself, which is like, okay, today I'm going to do some weights, but afterwards I'm going to do the thing I really enjoy.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of like, I hate, like when it comes to lifting weights, I hate squatting, but I also always make sure to pair something with squatting that I like, because it's kind of like giving yourself a reward. I'll do what I need to do, but afterwards I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
There's a kind of like a really good way about kind of, it's like taking advantage of your own psychology in a way.
Yeah. And it's like I've recently started kind of looking up and getting into like plyometric workouts and stuff like that, doing, frog jumps and trying to do like explosion push-ups and stuff like that, and box jumps and stuff like that.
Yeah, make it fun.
Not because any part of me loves them at all, but because I know that's going to help me out with martial arts quite a bit.
That's awesome.
And so that's kind of the deep psychological thing. So just knowing what language, knowing what motivates you, and like what you said, finding your whys. I like that a lot. But also when you speak to other dads, trying to understand their whys and speak their language. Everybody has a different language they speak that motivates them. And, and you said it's about starting small. I think that's so important, especially with dads. And as you get a little older, you don't have to, go to a gym and max out your squat and, do the rowing machine for an hour.
No,
or
I
anything
mean,
like that.
good Lord willing,
Do some push-ups, do some sit-ups, do a few kettlebell crunches, something like that. Something small.
You've got 60 years to figure this thing out. You know what I mean? That's the way I look at it. Like I said, if I'm planning on deadlifting when I'm 80 years old, I don't got to figure out any of this in the next year. You know what I mean? I can trial and error stuff till the cows come home for the next 20 years and still have plenty of time to dial things
Absolutely.
in. So the thing I see, or the thing I hate seeing, is people look at this as on or off, right? And I look at it as always on. Like I'm never not working on my fitness. There are times when I dial it back or dial it up, but it's always there. It's always on. It's always an on position. And I'm always tinkering. And sometimes it's less of a focus in life, and sometimes it's more of a focus in life, but it's not. And that's kind of like the all or nothing approach that it really gets at me, because I'm like, the days and the hours and the minutes are going to pass whether you do something with them or not. Mm-hmm. And you'd be much better off doing something half-assed for a few minutes a day than just wasting the opportunity altogether, right? Yeah. And I think that's the kind of what we're getting at is like, yeah, start small, because small adds up. Nothing does not add up, but small things over time add up. And you've got a lot of time here, aside from something horribly tragic happening to you.
Yeah. Yeah. You start small. You start doing like, I'm going to do 5 push-ups today. Eventually 5 push-ups are going to get easy. And then you're going to build and build and build. It's that simple.
And why do you think The Rock, okay, assistance aside, but why do you think The Rock is The Rock, right? The dude's been at this for like 20 years. Like, this is not something
you don't realize how old he is.
Yeah, like anybody you walk around and they're like in really good shape, right? That did not happen in like 6 months. These people have been at this thing for a long time, trying a lot of different shit, and they finally have figured out the thing that they do and works for them. Yeah. I think that's the thing you always gotta put back in your mind, is like, you're always just going to wish you had started like right now. Just start right now. And in 15 years, you can be where Josh Bridges is at, or you can be where whoever your idolized person physically is. Just start now. And your future self is really going to thank you, instead of putting it off and putting it off and putting it off for whatever reason.
That kind of what we were talking about, finding your own motivation and kind of rewarding yourself with something you want. If you guys go check out Jocko Willnick's Instagram page, he's a lot of who I based that off of. His Instagram page is awesome because it's just pictures of his watch that
At
he
4
takes.
o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, he's just like, I woke up at 4:30 today, or there's some days like I woke up at 3:30 today. He's in his 50s, and he's those of you who don't know, Jocko Willnick. My dogs are losing their mind. Jocko. Jocko Willnick is what happens when God maxes out your stats. He got COVID, like he tested positive for COVID, and he talked about it. He's like, I still went and worked out every day. He's like, I didn't do my warm ups like I should have. But he talked about like he wakes up at that ungodly hour, does a humongous workout, but then he says, but then I go surf every day because that's what I love. He goes, now I go do jiu-jitsu for a while. And he goes, and that's what I do. He said that's my reward for working out is I go do those two things that I love to do every day. So yeah, that's awesome stuff. So we had the goal of keeping this podcast under an hour.
I don't think we
nowhere near that goal.
No worries. It's a big topic, but it's an important one. I think we touched on a lot of good things. I'm from my perspective, if people are listening to this and this is like this stirs something in them, like I open the door, just like send me a direct message, reach out to me. This is kind of like I would consider this like my world. So I won't really ever get tired of talking about this.
Absolutely.
So if you're looking for somebody to just spitball on this stuff with you, not like coach you or do anything, I just like talk like that I'm your guy. So, but I think it's well worth going over our time limit to get it all out there.
Absolutely. Especially when you have an organic conversation that just works.
Totally. So let's wrap up. Let's wrap up with these last few things and we'll end on a good note. So let's go with, I'll keep mine short. So dads in action.
Yeah.
This idea is kind of like, have we seen dads out there doing good things, giving us hope for where humanity's going? The one that came to mind, it's not real recent, but like two or 3 months ago, my youngest was at the park. We were at the park and a little kid was there, came up kind of after we had started playing, and the little kid basically went down the slide as my kid was still on the slide and kind of ran him over. And, like my response as a parent like that is to kind of try to redirect my kid to focus on like themselves rather than what was done to them,
Yeah.
And like, hey, you're okay. It's no big deal. Move on. It's no sweat off your back kind of thing. But like the dad there, he like came over to his son and was very like, not like in a really mean, gruff, like unkind way, but was very like, hey, you need to be aware of other people and what's going on around you. This little boy was on the slide in front of you and you knocked him over. You need to apologize and make sure that he's okay. And then proceeded to make sure that his kid followed through and came over and checked on my son. Which is like, you're like, well, that's what any decent human being would do. Yeah. And I would counter that with, yes, but a lot of the times in those sorts of awkward interactions, it's sometimes easier if the other people are kind of being nonchalant, like we typically are. We don't really like, it's not a big deal. No worries. We're going to move on with our life. It can be easy to take the easy road out and just be like, sorry. And then move on with your kid. But the fact that dad like took the time to like kind of educate the son and provide some EQ, that's just a good thing to see. I mean, that's going to raise men who are kind and self-aware and thoughtful and I just have good character.
Yeah. That's what we in the teaching biz call a teachable moment.
A teachable moment. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Don't let them pass.
Yeah. That's awesome. Mine actually just happened yesterday. I have a buddy of mine, named Pat. He lives in New York. good friend of mine from college, and we talk every now and then. And he was talking about his because he was asking about our podcast. He was really interested in it, and he's not a dad, and he was like, he just recently got engaged. He goes, I don't think that's the plan at all. I don't think we'll ever cross that parent threshold. And a lot of it is, he's very ambitious and very focused on his business. And he's like, I think I'd be a really good dad, but I don't want to speak for him at all, certainly. But I know he's one of those guys where if he did that half-assed, that it would eat him up. But if he didn't put everything he could into his own ambitions in business, then that would eat him up too. Because he is, everything is here with him. And so he's just such a motivated guy. But he was talking about his godson and about hanging out with him and how it's like one of his favorite things to do. And he just talked about, he goes, we don't really do big things. He goes, we do little things. He comes over, we eat, we play video games. He goes, we talk about Harry Potter books. He just goes, we just do all these small things.
That's what the kids want, though, and that's that's so important, is like being with them, there with them. You know what I mean? They don't care how much money you got in your bank account. They don't care if you have a vacation planned or a plane to fly. They just don't care about any of that. They just don't have the reference points to understand any of it. What they care is that somebody's like they're interested, they're engaged, and you wouldn't believe how difficult of a thing that is to do. It's a difficult thing.
And that's kind of what we talked about last week. My dad told me before my oldest was born, the hardest part of being a dad, or the most important part of being a dad, is just showing up.
It is. It really is. I love the fact too that what you mentioned about Patrick. I love how thoughtful he is about being a father. I think about that sometimes. I think about that all the time. Like, these kids owe me nothing, right? They have no obligation to me. I was the one that made every decision to put them here.
Yeah.
So the only obligation is one way. It's me to them, and I made a commitment by agreeing to have them and bring them into this world. And I owe them everything that is attached to that commitment. And I think that is not something that's always well considered.
It's a very Confucian idea, that idea that respect is a cyclical thing.
Yeah.
Not even like, I'm thinking about this because that's what we're talking about in history right now. But,
I totally get what you mean. And I think that's that whole servant leadership aspect of
absolutely.
Parenthood. And I think the paradigm has not always been that way. And people have a lot of times jumped into parenthood without really thinking through those things very clearly. Yeah. And then realizing on the other side, when you can't walk it all back, that this wasn't what you really wanted and this wasn't what you really signed up for, and you didn't really understand all the implications of it. So to hear somebody like being analytical and thinking through the trade-offs and understanding them so that they know they can go in, with clear eyes and a full heart, so to speak. And really, if they're going to do this, they're going to do it all in. And if they don't feel like they can do it all in, then they're not going to jump in. And I think that's fair, because your kids, these kids that you have, whoever they are, whenever you have them, they deserve all in. Like that's the thing, and it's not fair for you to shortchange them,
Yeah. And he's a very thoughtful guy. And I love him a lot just because how thoughtful he is with some of that stuff. And we talked a lot about it. He also loved, kind of sidetracking a little bit, but he also loved the fact that this was like a place for men to speak about their issues, because we kind of talked about that last episode. That's typically something that hasn't happened. So
there's not a lot of places for that, nor is that culturally something that that's modeled to men, how to articulately and thoughtfully discuss these things. It's usually pretty rough around the edges.
I also loved the first thing he asked me. He goes, "So tell me what the end goal is." And that was how we started that. I loved that because it made me think. I was like, kind of just making a community, a support group, almost type place to collaborate and make each other better. And he was just
Yeah.
like, he's like perfect.
Yep.
He's
And
like, I feel he was my big brother in fraternity in college, and that's always kind of been our relationship. And so he was perfect.
Yeah,
Good job,
that's
Jack.
it. I mean, that's why, like I said, when I shared shared the first episode, is we don't really. I mean, this all was conceived of in about a week's time. We don't really have any idea what the end goal is, other than that, having a community of people that are interested in talking about this stuff. And the thing that goes back to that whole like trust the process, right? Like the outcome doesn't really matter, because if you're doing good things and you're doing good things all the time with good people, like good things are going to happen. It's just it's an inevitability. Whatever comes out of it will be, but it will definitely be good. And you just have to have faith in that.
There's some people in this life who are fuel for others, and there's some people in this life that are mud. And I definitely want to be fuel for people, but I also want to meet other people who'll be fuel for me. So
yeah, we don't need mud. Nobody needs mud in their life.
No.
All right, let's wrap up. Let these people go. Goals for the week. Okay, so goals from now to the next time we record. Kelsey and I, we actually took I guess we didn't take, but we have a webinar that we purchased and are going to watch a little bit about trying to make bedtime. Bedtime's not horrible at our house, but it's something we could definitely improve on. So we're going to try to work on how can we make bedtime a little bit easier. So the metric for us is less time between you're in bed at 8 p.m. and you're actually asleep, which right now is more like 10 interruptions and 45 minutes later. So that's a goal. I mean, I don't have any ideas of grandeur that we're going to have this solved by next week, but hopefully we'll have learned some stuff from this webinar and implemented that. Continue to exercise my patience muscle. I'm a big believer in focusing on a few things at a time, and that's going to remain pretty high on my list. So patience. That's my word. I'm a big believer in chanting, in mantras. So like one word, focus on that one word, repeat that one word. And so right now that word's patience for me. And then speaking kindly. I hear people talking to their kids a lot now that Cal's gone to some activities with other kids around and other parents. And one thing I'm constantly thinking when I hear people talk to their children is, man, that just doesn't sound kind. Like it just doesn't. If you were speaking to anybody else the way you're speaking to your child, nobody else would approve of it. And I don't think you would approve of it if you were to be recorded and played back. Yeah. And there are times I catch myself speaking like that to my kids, whether it's because I'm being impatient or I'm annoyed or I'm fed up or they aren't listening. And I do it because it's the thing we do with our kids. We give ourselves passes because they're our kids, because they're little people and they don't have any power in the world. And that's just not fair. And so that's definitely something I want to continue to layer on top of that patience point is, I want to speak to my kids the way I'd want other people to speak to them, the way I want them to speak to other people, regardless of the circumstances. There is a way to deliver discipline and a way to deliver frustration that can be done kindly. And there's a way that it can be done unkindly.
It's all about that balance.
Yeah.
So mine were finding the little moments to cherish, kind of what we talked about a few times on here, but definitely trying to, kind of on the Office when they talk about their wedding. Okay, I'm taking a snapshot of my favorite moments. Man. Like, this is a good moment. Remember
I love that.
this right here.
Mental pictures.
Yes. So doing that. Never don't have enough time is the great grammatic sentence I wrote there.
Oh man, I
Um,
love that. I
but
love that.
yeah, and that was something growing up. I mentioned this a little bit last week. I'm sure we'll dive into this later. And I have great dad and great parents. And I couldn't ask for better parents, but they were both very busy, and sometimes I felt as though I didn't have their full attention all the time, and sometimes I didn't feel like they had other priorities. And I don't even almost want to say that. Just kind of their focus is sometimes in other places.
Oh yeah.
It's not really their fault. They're people, and I've caught myself doing that a few times where my daughter will be talking, and it's literally she's talking and I'm not even listening. I'm just like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we all succumb to it, right? Like that is the difficulty of balancing that. Like, um, Stephen Covey talks about it in his productivities books about like things that are urgent but not important, things that are important but not urgent. And
yeah.
like our kids,
Great
a lot
fit.
of times fall into that very important section of our life, but they're always there. And so they seem not urgent.
Yeah,
And therefore, things that seem like they need to happen right now or things that have to have my attention right now push out the important, right? And that, I mean,
absolutely.
no one's ever going to be perfect at that, but like I totally agree. I don't ever want to use the words I'm too busy or I'm
Yeah.
busy. I have a choice in the matter of how I allocate my time.
Yeah, I want to make sure that when I ask my 7-year-old how was school today, not only do I mean I really want to know how was school today, but I'm also listening and talking back and being invested in her.
I love that.
And then the last one is know thyself, is what I wrote down, and kind of something I've been working on lately with how stressful my job has been. First year doing special education. For those of you who don't know, special education is like regular teaching, except for you have to learn a billion details about the law and a billion details about paperwork. Um, and it's very stressful. It has probably the highest burnout rate in education as far as teacher turnover. And it's been pretty difficult. And I've started to notice lately that you know, I think we all have those moments of like anxiety or apprehension or stuff like that. I'm starting to like become aware of it, which is not fun. If anyone struggles with things like that, and I've always known that that's a thing. Where okay, so I'm very aware that I'm anxious right now, and I'm kind of freaking out a little bit about it. But now I'm becoming aware of when I get like that, and so and I've been trying to take steps, and I can't brag enough about my wife, how wonderful she's been in that process. She is, I, uh, I definitely I told her the analogy today. It was like, I feel like we're holding each other up right now. And just trying to be conscientious of that's okay, recognize when it happens, don't take it out on the kids. Because I think that's kind of what you said. We tend to give ourselves passes sometimes. So know when that's happening and make sure that doesn't spill over into any undue, moments that I'm going to regret later.
I love it, dude. We got
Um,
a good week ahead of us then.
yes, we do. So,
All right.
uh,
Well, if people are still listening right now, the hour goal has gone by. But yeah, man, I'm having a lot of fun recording these, and it
you too, man.
sounds like some people are having a lot of fun listening to them. So if you are listening in, you can find us. Jaxon, where are you going to have people contact you at?
So just send it to my email, jacksonroberts@gus.pittstate.edu, repping the Gorillas, or just message me on Facebook.
Awesome. And for me, I'll direct people. If you guys have questions, in particular, you want to talk about fitness related things because of this episode, or you just want to talk about dad stuff, my handle on Instagram is @steven.freeborn. You can find me there. Link in the bio for all the other good stuff. And yeah, I'm excited to keep the train rolling. I'm excited for next week to get a guest on here and
Absolutely.
add another perspective to the whole conversation.
We'll be talking about the roles of being a dad, the different roles those fill. I'm very excited about that one.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. So
if you guys want to know Donnie Martin's phone number, send me a message on Facebook. I'll send it to you.
We'll just start giving out all our friends' contact information.
Him in particular.
So. All right, man. Yeah, good talk, man.
All right, awesome. Love it, man.
I'll talk to you later.
All right, have a good one, bud.
See ya.